Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. We stir things up in the governor's office and we take to the stars. Andy's got the rundown.
Sam, we know the governor wants to tax sales on the internet, but what's this about taxing your access to the internet? Today we talked to Mike Hillerby, Chief of Staff for Governor Kenny Guinn. And then we talked to an amazing scientist with connections to Star Trek. Dr. Farouk El-Baz joins us. Sam?
And coming up on the Power Pundit panel today, Mary Lau, Alfredo Alonso, and Howard Rosenberg. It's all coming up next on the all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by Charter Communication.
The Abowed family has an appetite for dialogue. Agree or disagree, have the conversation. All opinions are welcome. Since 1977, Adele's.
Catch a straight, dine at 8. Lucky you. Lucky you. Dance till 1. Have some fun. Lucky you. Lucky you. Taste the shrimp. Have a sip. Try the pool. Play it cool. At the Sienna Hotel Spa Casino. Lucky you.
In business, the key to success is not the quantity of your clients, it's the quality of your clients. Almost all companies will tell you they want more sales, but what they really need are quality customers who pay their bills on time. With Employer Link's client vendor screening program, we provide comprehensive reports regarding the financial performance of your corporate prospects, customers, and vendors. Build your business with great clients and vendors. Call Employer Links today at 883-3733.
If you own a business and want to maximize your company's potential, join the Retail Association of Nevada. Our membership benefits include the Nevada Retail Network Self-Insured Group, providing workers' compensation coverage that can lower your rates. That savings can go directly to your bottom line. We are an effective pro-business organization that lobbies on behalf of our business members. The Retail Association of Nevada, protecting Nevada businesses for 35 years. Call 882-1700 to see what we can do for your organization.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad, political analyst Ande Engleman on No Holds Barred Political Forum. Now, from the News 4 Broadcast Center, here's Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're joined by an old friend of the program, Mike Hillerby, who currently serves as Chief of Staff to Governor Kenny Guinn. Welcome.
Good morning.
All right, you have taken issue, Mike, with my introduction.
I know. We wanted to talk about the Internet Tax Freedom Act and possible extensions and what was going on in Washington, D.C. and the
Boy, did you make it sound boring.
I know, it does. It's a tremendously boring issue until you get down to the dollar amounts and some fairly serious issues for states.
Well, explain to folks what we're talking about here.
There are a couple of things, and it takes a little bit of background. I'll try to do it quickly. What we're talking about is a possible extension of the Internet Tax Freedom Act, and that's specifically taxes on Internet access. Has nothing to do with sales taxes on purchases made over the internet. Separate issue, so that's important to know because a lot of times that gets confused.
Now, is this a state or federal deal?
Well, that's really one of the core pieces of this issue. Right now, there are 11 states who were grandfathered in under the 1998 Act that have taxes on internet access. There are another 11 or 12 states.
And we're not one of them.
We are not one of them. There are another 11 or 12 states that have taxes on cable and DSL lines, high-speed cable and DSL lines that many people are using now for both internet access and telephone services. And we're also not one of those.
Okay.
The question now is, Congress has passed a moratorium on any new taxes on that access, grandfathered those states in. That moratorium is now up, and the question now is, how is it going to be extended? The National Governors Association, what the governor was referring to a couple of weeks ago in a speech that he made, the National Governors Association has passed a resolution urging Congress to extend it for 2 years, don't change anything about it, let's see what's happening with the technology, let's look at it, let's really discuss the impacts to the states. And another part of that issue is this has traditionally been a state and local government issue. The regulation of telecommunication services has been, and the taxing of those services, be they excise taxes. There's another whole issue about the property and income tax from those companies that are involved in that. Some people read that bill, say if you can't tax internet access, you can't tax anything that I do, including the property taxes they pay on the buildings and assets that support local schools and things like that. So some very complicated issues in there, and what the governor said by an overwhelming vote at the NGA was, wait for another 2 years, extend it for 2 more years, exactly as it sits now. We don't want to put any taxes on internet access. Have no interest in doing that. But don't expand that definition to include things that would now take away existing tax revenues from normal telecommunications, not the sales tax, but existing excise taxes on telecommunications. And the bigger issue is
like the luxury tax?
Essentially, it's an excise tax on telecommunications. But we've had those in telecommunication services since the Spanish-American War. This isn't exactly new territory that anybody's talking about.
I think it was a little later than that because we didn't have phones
but on telecommunication services,
right.
on different kinds of services. But that has traditionally been a state issue, and that's part of this whole debate is should that remain at the state level where state and local governments make the decisions about how best to do that, or should the federal government preempt that?
Because in Carson City they have a franchise tax on telephone services. So, you know, not only do I have a DSL line, but I pay a franchise tax on that line to Carson City, which is, you know, it's beginning, the franchise taxes are beginning to get pretty expensive. They've got them on all the utilities and everything. You know, it's now like $25 a month altogether in franchise taxes I'm paying. You know,
okay, what about the other issue here of sales taxes? Because there are some companies, when I purchase things over the internet, there are some companies that say, yes, we're registered in every one of the 50 states, and we pay, you know, you have to pay sales tax because of that, and it goes to that state. But other companies, it's very, you know, anti-competitive, I think.
Right. One of the, and that's part of the streamlined sales tax, they call that, and we're one of the states that is involved in that process, as the majority of states are. You've got guests on the show later today from the Retail Association that are much more articulate about it than I and know more about that subject. But that is another issue. Right now there are a number of voluntary agreements that are being talked about and being put in place in some states for companies that have come forward and said, you know, I think I'd like to get an agreement with you now about how we're going to be taxed. The companies that do business over the internet raise a very important point. If they're going to be charged sales tax, they can't keep track of the thousands of jurisdictions in the sales tax where their customers might buy something. What does it mean if you buy something in Chicago versus Champaign-Urbana, Illinois versus Sparks, you know, and all these cities? How do you keep track of the state, city, county sales taxes if they have them, and what does that mean? The idea is, how do we find a way to streamline that? Can we get the states to get involved in a process, Congress to essentially ratify that process to allow us to move forward, to find ways to be sure that local retailers are competing on a level playing field with those people that do business over the internet, and states and localities, again, preserve both that revenue stream and their right to make those decisions.
Go ahead.
I just want to clarify on the
You got to come on more often, okay? It's just that
anytime. Happy to.
On the access issue. So what people should do, if they want that moratorium to stay where they don't want to pay those taxes, they should get in touch with their congressional delegation, their congressmen, and their senators?
I think there's really no question that the moratorium is going to go forward. What the National Governors Association, including Governor Guinn, and again, the majority of the governors said was, don't expand it any more than it is now. Let's extend that moratorium for 2 years. We have no interest in taxing access to the internet, but don't expand it either. They wanted to expand that to include DSL, to include the voice over internet protocols and other things that would have really very serious impacts on state and local revenues. And again, part of that issue is a federal versus state issue. That's a decision that has traditionally been made at this level.
Okay, and I hope people can understand the speed we're talking at today. Just a brief answer, but does the governor have concerns about the fact that the Supreme Court wouldn't hear the objections to the Class II gaming machines that we spoke about on the program here last week, and that we could see thousands and thousands more, in fact up to 100,000 is the projection, slot machines across the country, but a large amount in California. Does he view that as any kind of major threat to Nevada's economy?
I think we look at any of the gaming expansions around the country and their impacts on Nevada. As we speak this morning, the gaming numbers are going to be released for January. Not particularly good. In fact, we're down over $2 million in collections. The win still sits at about 1.75% or thereabouts for the year. It ought to be at about 5% for those casinos. We're still seeing a lot of weakness in that sector.
And the higher sales tax doesn't come close to offsetting that.
It does not offset that. And
does it also show, though, that companies are now looking at making more money from their retail side, from shows, from dining, etc., because those revenues are continuing to go up, correct?
They are continuing to go up, and the issue for the state is, and again, it's one of those fairly complicated ones, but the 6%, 6.75% gaming tax goes to the state, and we use that to pay for schools and other kinds of services. As more of the business shifts from that side to the sales tax side, that revenue is split between schools, local governments, and the state government. So it has an impact on our ability at the state level to provide services.
Should we raise the gaming tax?
Not saying that at all.
And on that note, we'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers. We're going to the stars. We'll tell you about it when we come back.
Atlantis is cooking up a party. It's every diner's paradise. Toucan Charlie's Buffet and Grill, voted Reno's best buffet by locals year after year. Experience the Mongolian barbecue, new Asian station, and sumptuous exhibition stations filled with fresh entrees, salads, and desserts. Try the Friday night seafood buffet and Sunday champagne brunch. Atlantis.
Would you like to savor a Trento pork chop? Or maybe pasta rags with grilled chicken? Hugo's Tuscan Grill at D'Andrea is a celebration of color, flavor, and freshness. Each dish is created from natural, wholesome foods that is delicious and nutritious. Hugo's is a comfortable restaurant with breathtaking city views. If you enjoy great food and good company, visit us here at Hugo's. It's the best that dining can be. 2900 South D'Andrea Parkway in Sparks.
Allegra is Northern Nevada's #1 offset printing and digital copying facility.
From disc to destination, Allegra utilizes tomorrow's technology today. We specialize in booklets, catalogs, manuals, newsletters, stationery, and envelopes.
Xerox, Docutech, 4-color printing with Heidelberg Speedmaster, desktop publishing and design, graphic services, pickup and delivery.
If you need printing, Allegra can do it. From disc to destination.
To experience the royal cuisine of India, you need some serious magic or simply transport yourself to India Garden, right here in Reno, where you'll discover Indian specialties refined over centuries. Sikh kebab, tandoori dishes cooked in our own tandoor oven, biryani specialties, curries, fresh-baked Indian bread, over a dozen vegetarian dishes, even dishes rare to India like dosa, South Indian-style crepes. India Garden off South Virginia near Sports West. We are India.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad and Ande Engleman.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we are delighted to welcome the Nevada Medal winner presented by DRI this year. Once again, Farouk El-Baz, who is a doctor, and it's a pleasure to have you here. And just a brief explanation here. He's highly regarded as a director of the Center for Remote Sensing and renowned for his contributions to the understanding of the origin and evolution of desert landforms. I've got to start right off the top. Front page of the New York Times today. The story came out yesterday. Images from the Hubble telescope reveal the deepest glance into the universe back in time to be within a stone's throw of the Big Bang itself. That has got to be the most astonishing story, perhaps in our lifetime.
It really is. It is most wonderful that we have the Hubble telescope in Earth orbit looking beyond what we see from the Earth, because it's eyeballs rather than all of other satellites, their eyeballs are looking down. But the Hubble is looking up and expanding our view of the universe. And now we see to the edge of the universe, where we see to the very beginnings of the formation of the universe, including our solar system. It's something it's mind-boggling. That's wonderful.
Well, and tens of thousands of galaxies.
No, billions and billions. And each galaxy may have billions of stars. The numbers are vast.
How do you accept? I can't accept numbers that large.
Well, it really is very difficult to perceive all of that. And even when we looked at any planetary body by itself, when we started looking at the moon and counted the craters that came from impact by meteorites, the numbers are mind-boggling. You go to Mars and you do the same thing, and the numbers are also mind-boggling. How many meteorites could have been to form all of these craters in all of these planetary bodies? So the numbers in the universe are really beyond the comprehension of us mortal human beings.
Well, you're not mortal human being.
You need to pay homage and explain to Trekkies why this man's name is familiar.
Okay, well, not only was he featured in the Tom Hanks show From the Earth to the Moon on HBO, but also there was a shuttle in Star Trek The Next Generation that actually had your name on it, correct?
That's right.
How did you find out about it?
And it's wonderful. I was really actually in my office, and And a graduate student of mine said, did you see Star Trek The Next Generation? I said, no. He said, well, they have something with your name on it, and they write it exactly the same way with EL and hyphen BAZ. And then he smiled and laughed, and I thought he was joking. And then a friend of mine from NASA calls me up the same day, and he says, hey, Farouk, now you can get all of the books and all of the papers you've been slaving over and throw them out the window. I said, what are you talking about? He said, I'm telling you, man, get all of this stuff that you're working on and throw it out in the trash. You've made it. I said, what do you mean? He said, your name is on Star Trek. and the story of how it came, it was really fantastic too. Because during the Apollo years in 1971, there was a camera crew that came to photograph us training the astronauts. And they were with us for 3 days. There was a cameraman, a lightsman, and the sound man. The sound man was a little short kid who was very delightful and very interested in the lunar features, and kept on, every time we stopped, he would ask me about the features of the moon, and I explained it to him. And that year I had published a book on lunar surface features. I gave him a copy because he was interested, and autographed it. This man, life became good to him, and he became executive producer of Star Trek: Next Generation. And he named it. That's right.
Now, I want to ask a question about inner space.
Yes.
Okay. We live in a desert area here in Nevada. Of course, you're in Boston, which has a ton of water, so, you know. But I know that in ancient times, the city of Masada survived on 16 days of rain, mostly by filling the large jugs and portioning out the water. What is that what we in arid climates are going to need to do one of these days in order to survive? Do we have any way of finding water underneath our deserts here?
Even though I live in Boston, I hail from Egypt, and Egypt is in the driest place on earth. And the dryness of the deserts of today is something peculiar that happens once in a while. All of these dry lands in the world, the Sahara, the Arabian desert, the Taklamakan of China, all of these deserts were not as dry as they are today only 5,000 years ago. Between 5,000 years ago and 11,000 years ago, they were absolutely wet. Well, wet climates prevailed. There were lakes, rivers, and there was a savanna-like environment. There were animals all over the place, and man roamed the terrain. So it was really different. And before that, that was a dry cycle. Before the dry cycle, there was another wet cycle between 25,000 and 35,000. Before that, another dry, and so on. So these are cycles, in natural cycles, dry and wet and dry and wet. So we, in desert areas, look forward to a wet cycle coming in the future.
Do we know when that's coming?
You did exactly like President Sadat did. As soon as we figured this out, I was working as science advisor to President Anwar Sadat, and I told him this story, and he said, well, Farouk, this means that the rain is going to come back again. I said, yes, Mr. President. He said, when?
I've got one last question for you, Farouk. You know, the president wants us to go to Mars. We're seeing that the Hubble spacecraft, or telescope rather, may be allowed to shut down because they say it's too dangerous to send shuttles there. What's your feelings about this? Where should our money be directed for the future of space exploration?
There is no question about the fact that a goal like reaching Mars is a wonderful goal, and it can tie the whole organization together and for an objective that they can reach, and they feel good about doing it, the way Apollo did it for us. But in the meantime, I really don't think that this should be at the cost of other things, and particularly the Hubble telescope. The Hubble telescope has expanded our mind and our vision of the universe tremendously, and that should be supported. We don't have to send the shuttle to the Hubble telescope or the space station. We can figure out other simpler launch vehicles to go and supply the shuttle and supply the telescope as well as the space station. So I really think we should not limit ourselves with what the leftover shuttles can do. We can expand our minds and do it differently.
Dr. Farouk El-Baz, what a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you very much.
And come back anytime, because we want to talk about the Apollo program that we're involved in too. We'll be right back on Nevada Newsmakers after this.
Time for the 2004 Home and Garden Show.
And we invite you to come see us at Affordable Landscaping.
We create outdoor rooms with enchanting water gardens and graceful waterfalls.
At Affordable Landscaping, our designers will customize your yard to complement and enhance the beauty of your home. Hi, I'm Mike.
And I'm Bart. We're owners of Affordable Landscaping. We look forward to seeing you at the Home Show, March 26th through the 28th.
Just look for Rusty here. He looks a little like Bart.
The Abowd family has an appetite for dialogue. Agree or disagree, have the conversation. All opinions are welcome. Since 1977, Adele's.
Your home is an expression of all things comforting and familiar. For custom storage, you can count on California Closets to provide quality, value, and design integrity. The process is easy, combining your personal style with our organizing expertise. We care about what matters most to you, making your home functional and beautiful. California Closets, simplifying home and life since 1978. Call today for your complimentary design consultation.
Join us for the uncorking of the 3rd Reno Tahoe Wine, Food, and Jazz Festival, April 30th through May 2nd at the Reno Hilton. Sample wines, cooking demonstrations, live jazz, and purchase fine art at festival days. Try dishes from the Reno Hilton's finest restaurants and taste wines from over a dozen wineries at the Grand Tasting. And at the exclusive Winemakers Reception and Art Auction, meet winemakers from Cakebread Cellars, Sequoia Grove, Benziger, and others. A fine wine festival that won't need to age to perfection. April 30th through May 2nd, only at the Reno Hilton.
And now, back to Nevada Newsmakers with Sam Shad and Ande Engleman.
First, I was not promoting a tax on gaming. Okay, go on.
For those who just tuned in, that is in reference to the first segment of the program. Okay, let's introduce our pundit panel today. Raring to go here, Alfredo Alonso, who heads up government affairs for Lionel, Sawyer, and Collins. Mary Lau, who's executive director of the Retail Association of Nevada, one of our proud sponsors, and Howard Rosenberg, who has never given me a dime, and he's a regent. And
thank you for clearing that up.
And has more money than God that way.
Okay. And I'm teasing. Okay, I want to start out actually with a serious subject. This morning the news was from Madrid, Spain, that a train was blown up with multiple bombs. 200 people have been killed. As many as 1,000 people have been injured. And my thought immediately went to train carrying nuclear waste to Yucca Mountain, terrorists putting bombs on that train. Suddenly, what's the effect of that? And, you know, how do we support the re-election of a president that is in favor of sending trains full of nuclear waste to Nevada when we see something like this happen?
Mary, jump in
I hate
here.
to get totally practical on something like that, but that nuclear waste is sitting outside in open containers now, and it would be in a totally populated area that they could drop a bomb onto it, too. So, I mean, the risk is there regardless, and I'm not defending Yucca Mountain or anything else, but, you know, terrorist risks are absolutely real, and it can happen anywhere.
And Mary's right. I mean, Yucca Mountain's a terrible deal, but this risk is, you know, obviously it exists in every single nuclear power plant and elsewhere. So it's a problem nationally that I think has to be addressed from a global standpoint as well.
Howard?
Don't look at me. You know, it's one of the things, particularly, that when we talk with our students, they bring up the same kinds of things that you do, and there's no answer to it, Sam. It's dangerous no matter what it is that we do.
Well, one of the things that concerns me, and I agree with you, Mary, that something could be done at a power plant. 60 Minutes has recently done a couple of different exposés on chemical plants and nuclear plants that have the most atrocious security. Yeah. Reporters are walking in there without anybody attending them, but nuclear waste at local power plants is not going to go away because of Yucca Mountain. They're still continuing to make more nuclear waste that's going to sit there and then eventually be transported here. So it's not like Yucca Mountain ends nuclear waste to all those other cities. I'm just saying this is another instance of where we're just adding another danger in.
No, we're absolutely victims of our own technology and the lack of funding to continue with the technology to handle it properly. I think Europe's done a better job with their nuclear waste than we have. And that goes back through multiple regimes and everything else.
No, they don't store it.
Yeah, they don't.
Yeah.
They reuse it. They reuse it, and we're not doing that yet.
That's what we should be doing.
Very definitely.
Speaking of bombs, can we move to the subject of the Board of Regents?
Absolutely.
Thank you for that lovely segue. What about the Board of Regents?
You have a meeting coming up.
Yes.
And I understand that you're going to be talking about setting some policies so that people can't lie on their resumes anymore.
Isn't that a novel idea? I was under the impression that we already had that, but evidently we don't. We have it on some applications, but not on all. So we're going to try to standardize it. There's also another thing coming up at the Board of Regents about applications that our students fill out to become, to come into any one of our constituent units. We're going to talk about standardizing those applications and taking a look at them very carefully for what it is that they ask and what it is that they require of our students when they come in.
Do they ask them whether or not they're citizens?
At this point, they do.
And you want to have that removed?
I'm not entirely sure. I want to discuss the possibility. I'm afraid that what it does is it sets a lot of our kids up to have to lie, and I don't want them put in that kind of a position.
Because no one ever checks the applications?
Well, they do check applications, they do. But there isn't the machinery to go as thoroughly through them as we should.
And what about John Cummings?
What about John Cummings? You know how I feel about John Cummings. The situation with Mr. Cummings and with President Remington is the same that it has been. They should have been given a chance to answer the charges. They don't even know what the charges are. I'm furious about it, but I am one member of a 13-member board. And until the board as a whole decides to move one way or the other, there's very little I can do about it except bitch like there's no tomorrow, which I'm doing.
Okay, well, I'm glad you are, Howard, because I think Mr. Remington and Mr. Cummings deserve to have a fair hearing.
Of course they do. Of course they do.
They do, and I think this brings the question of do we have too many members on the board?
What difference would it make whether we had 9 members, 13, 15, which is optimum across the country? You're still going to have people who disagree with one another. And when there is a split and the disagreement is there, you're still going to have the same problem.
Well, I agree with you, but I think you also have an issue of too many cooks. And I think that's evident with some of the issues that are coming up before the Regents these days.
I disagree with you. I think it's good to have enough so that you can discuss something thoroughly. I disagree with many of my colleagues violently, but as long as we're talking, there's always that possibility that things might change. When we stop talking, then we're dead.
Yeah, but you've got colleagues that you disagree with are up for election this year, right?
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, you've got one side you're doing a policy to standardize your form, saying we don't want people lying on their applications. Now you're saying you don't want to standardize the application to be a student because you might force people to lie.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. What I'm saying is we need to talk about it, and that's what I'm hoping will happen.
And that's what we're done doing right now. We'll be back after this on Nevada Newsmakers.
Atlantis is cooking up a party. It's every diner's paradise. Toucan Charlie's Buffet and Grill, voted Reno's best buffet by locals year after year. Experience the Mongolian barbecue, new Asian station, and sumptuous exhibition stations filled with fresh entrees, salads, and desserts. Try the Friday night seafood buffet and Sunday champagne brunch. Atlantis.
When you sign up for Wells Fargo free checking, you get more than free checking. You get the freedom to bank when and where you want. Wells Fargo, the next stage.
Nevada Newsmakers, brought to you in part by Charter Communication.
A busy week and another one coming up next week.
Yes, we're going to meet George Tagliatti, the new head of the Department of Investigations, and then we're going to talk to Brad Summerhill and learn about a revolution in Elko.
Okay, and we'll see you next week. Don't forget, you can catch the show on KOH, all 4 episodes, Sunday mornings from 9 o'clock until 11 a.m., and then repeats every evening on Charter at 9:30.
Thank you for watching.